Hello, everyone. I'm Philippe Pasquier, and I'm talking to you from the unceded territory of the Coast Salish people in what is known now as Vancouver, British Columbia in Canada. So first, I want to thank the organizer of Speaking Art AI and this session today, Daniel Kwak and Thomas Marusiak, for their invitation. Today, I'm going to talk to you about small data and model crafting as maybe an alternative to the most dominant forms of commercial AI that we are confronted with. First, I've been working on generative AI in particular since 2008 when I created the Metacreation Lab. And we are interested not in general artificial intelligence, but really simply AI as the partial or complete automation with algorithm of creative tasks. And creative tasks are all those tasks for which we don't have a notion of optimal solution or best solution. And at the Metacreation Lab, we've been working on the automation of creative tasks across domains, music, visual, movement, etc. And we really have an integrated approach in our research where we do scientific research, produce algorithms that we evaluate. When they work, we work with the industry in making interfaces and getting them accepted and used by professionals as well as by beginners and often by learners, therefore. And we also use those algorithms and those systems ourselves to create content, to make art and art design. And we work with artists that we invite in the lab and we collaborate with to also get a second person opinion. We really believe in participatory design, this idea that we want the artists to be involved and the creators to be involved in the design of the tools that are supposed to serve them. And so what I'm going to talk about today is some of the implications of this rise of generative AI for content creation. We really used, and that's not going to stop, to have AI integrated as content recommendation. So you use a search engine, it recommends you some website to go to, you watch a movie, you get recommended maybe another movie you would like, same for music, etc. With the rise of generative AI, we are adding to those recommendations something new, which is that we're using now AI to actually generate content, either from scratch or in a co-creative fashion. And so that has sort of interesting implication. And I do believe for education, it will potentially be a game changer because those generative systems are already called for by this notion of interaction. And with those large language models in particular, we really are moving from the world of linear media to the world of interactive media and agents, in fact, instead of linear content. And so there's therefore an imperative that is societal, but also economical to the rise of those generative systems. And what I mean by that is that if you write a book or make a movie, it's okay to have 1 human or 200 humans look at every second of that movie and make everything by hand. But if you have an open world with millions of players, like World of Warcraft, I think is 11 million players right now, and this is an open-ended world, then how many storylines, how many characters, how many animations, how many minutes of music, how much content do you really need? Well, way too much to generate everything by hand. And so there's a rise here, a sort of necessity and a call by the market for a system that would generate assets on demand and would generate potentially the right content at the right time. And this is really important and might have really important implications in the domain of education, because we are for once in a position when this AI system can be used to track and follow the flow zone. So in any sort of experience, you play a game, you have a conversation, or in education, you're a learner. If the content is way too easy, too simple, too boring, you're going to lose attention. If it's too complicated, you can't move forward in that game, you keep on losing, then you're going to lose attention. If you want to keep in the flow zone and be productive, then you need to be in that fun, engaging sort of a zone. And it turns out this zone changes dynamically, and it changes dynamically differently for everyone. Some people are slow learners, or some people are fast learners, but then they hit a plateau. There's all sorts of dynamics, and we're now in a position to track those dynamics and generate the right content for the right learner, for the right conversation, for the right game play at the right time. And that's really the promise of having adaptive experience. And in education, it might change things a lot, because the only reason why there's one professor for a number of students is economical. If you're a prince or a sultan or a princess in this world, still you will have your own professors and something really personalized, so that your flow zone can be sensed and acted upon. All right, so that was my little introduction to bring the concept of flow, and how we have opportunities here. Now I'm going to talk a bit about what we did and what we do in the lab. The rise of generative AI has mostly been the rise of prompt-based interfaces, and there's been a lot of pushback against that. So prompt-based interfaces are nothing new. In fact, there's an example here, early example of 2012 of a system that is still in operation. You can try it for yourself. It's called Audio Metaphor. You enter a prompt of a soundscape that you want to listen to, and the system, and an emotional arc for both the valence and arousal, as well as the duration. And the system will find background and foreground sounds for the various concepts you entered in your prompt, and produce, a mix that you can then go and edit in Pro Tools, Ableton, or Reaper. And so there's nothing new. And of course, in research, we're always one generation ahead of the industry still to these days. But there's been this real rise of those systems since 2020, 2022. And with them, a serious pushback, because they are trained on trillions of images, on all of the words online, without the consent of creators. They're trained on material available on the web through the use of a gap, in a way, which is that as a faculty and a researcher in Canada, through fair use, I have the right to scrap the internet to train models. The models, therefore, do not contain the data, and we can show that they do not plagiarize the data, although they can get very, very close to things that resemble the data. Then we can exploit commercially, in collaboration with companies, those models. That loophole is being pushed back by a lot of the stakeholders. But beside the legal battles around the potential ethical problem associated with big data, there is also other alternative types of AI that I think are worth considering. And in the lab, we've been really working, and that's what I want to talk about today, on small data and model crafting. And we believe this has educational implication and advantages as well. The TLDR of the motivation and the specification for the type of system we're developing in the lab, and I'll give an example in the visual domain right now, is that when we talk to artists, they don't really want to, if they have to use AI, they don't really want to use a model trained on everyone else's data. What they would want is having more control and seizing the means of production and train their own model on their own data, and then be able to navigate and exploit that model. They don't have big data. They don't have trillions of images, maybe in the dozens, in the hundreds, maybe in the thousands, if you extract frame from videos and things like that. But they want to be able, those artists, to work with their own small data sets, and they want to keep data sovereignty. They want to keep track their data and make sure their life's work, which is in those data, doesn't get disseminated on no one's cloud, or doesn't end up online, given the consequences now of doing so. And so they want potentially things to run locally, and if possible at video speed, so that there's direct manipulation. They don't want to learn PyTorch or Python, and so they want a system that requires no programming whatsoever, and would run in real time, would be free and open source, so someone who knows could inspect the code to make sure it does only what it says it does. And if you look at systems that follow and respect those specifications, then you'll find exactly known. Maybe Comfy UI, but that still requires graphical programming and it's quite technical. And so we made one. We made one in the visual domain. It's called Autolume, and we started it in 2022, and just got an award at the Explanet conference at Ars Electronica this year for it. And it is literally this set of modules that allows anyone to train their own model with their own data. There's a super resolution module as well that allows to take 1024 by 1024 like small models, because you can't generate 4K or 8K with current models on a single computer with a GPU, and artists don't want to work on 1024 by 1024. So super resolution is important, both for static images and moving images. And then once you train the models, there's of course the real-time modules that allow you to explore that model. And you can have access to all of the parameters of the training and all the exploration of the model through this graphical interface. You can also use Autolume as a neural visual synthesizer, whereby you can control it externally with OSC controls, and there's a feed of video feed NDI output that you can capture in Resolume or in Touch Designer in another software. So it can really be used as a visual sanitizer. You can mix different models together, model blending, and you can bend the weight and apply transformation directly on the weight, and so manipulate the inside of that network and have access really to everything that way. So a great tool to experiment and to craft models and interact with those models using direct manipulation, as you can see here. So we've been working with artists, and we've been ourselves deriving artworks with Autolumes. Here is an example, for example, of a model trained with Erika Lapatat-Jansen, which is a visual artist based in Vancouver. And then she was interested in getting the aesthetic of her work and the color palettes, but then realized, oh, I can make my work move now. And then here you can see how you can sort of animate what would be otherwise more painterly static work. You can also have it to be audio reactive, so you can use Autolume in performances. So a lot of those works and collaborations, we grouped them into our Autolume exhibition that was last year at Ars Electronica in Linz, and a number of works were shown there. Among these works was some audio reactive work, and so Autolume can be used in that capacity too. Here you can see me on stage at Musica Acustica, and I'll play a little of Autolume being used in this project called Revival with my trio called Cafe A. All right, so that gives you an idea of the work that can be done with Autolume in conjunction with Touch Designer in this case and Vijay Amagi. The other problem that we have with big data is also that those big data models, they pretend to be omnipotent, omniscient, to be able to generate, in the case of images, all of the images. But it's not true. If you try to generate Arabic calligraphy, and I work with one of my PhD students, Arshia Soban here, who is doing calligraphy as an artistic practice himself. Well, DALL-E 3 on the right here do something really pretty, but it's not Arabic characters. It's faking it. In fact, reminiscent of the Orientalism bias that Edward Said was denouncing already in the 1970s, talking about the painters from the 19th century, white painters decrypting the Arab world for a white audience, and were at the time already hallucinating or making up Arabic character. And so there's both underrepresentation of those data for big models to capture Arabic calligraphy, and also a bias in some of the data that are present out there. And so of course you end up with those models who pretend to do everything, but there's a bit more of an homogenization of aesthetics, and a lot of what we call the long tail of the distribution, all those cultures, all those practices that are not necessarily extremely well or represented in massive volumes online, then the models actually fail. And so if you want to generate Arabic calligraphy, then you have to train your own model. And so you have to have your own data set and doing so. That's exactly what we do with Arsha Soban, and we derive an artistic practice out of those models as well. So that's Autolume and some of its uses, really. We give workshops, and we'll be really happy to give more of these in the futures, in art schools, in festivals, and there's also online, so that when you download and try Autolume for yourself, you can have access to a recording of the workshop that goes through everything. We believe that for education, it's a really good platform from high school onward. It's not really complicated, and it goes through the entire process of, hey, let's curate data and talk about the issues that occur with data management and AI. Let's then train a model and talk about the cost of training model on the GPU and all that, and model crafting, and how one makes decision, and how the data influence the model, and some of the decisions that are being made there, and then exploit the model and talk about the nature of what's coming out of those models. And so it really allows to educate and to get everyone to run on the entire sort of life cycle of an AI system. And so I talked about Autolume today, but we develop small data and model crafting systems for music, for sound design, for sound synthesis. And so this is not just Autolume necessarily. Here, the vision is that while you can, the for-profit Californian companies will let you navigate big models trained on scrap data. They won't let you adapt them. Sometimes they do, but rarely. And certainly they won't let you craft your own model from scratch. And so we believe in curating and using your own data, sourcing your own data. We give more to the users in terms of affordances and to seize the mean of production. And we believe that that results in much more ethical and indisputable gain of authorship and gain of expressivity by the user and the artist. So we like to push this small data approach to the rescue of the big data, which is still there and justified and can be done ethically. And as we move forward, this is increasingly the case. But big data has those issues associated with copyright and plagiarism. We also have those big models we don't quite understand. Crafting a model is a great way to gain explainability by gaining transparency, by being the author of the data and of the training itself, not just of the output of the model. We talked about how it's a way, small data, we believe, to alleviate some of the bias and issues that comes with the big data approaches, and to fight against maybe this aesthetic homogenization that is coming with big data. And so there's legally speaking, there's been already results showing that prompting is actually not enough to be considered the author of a piece of work. And so here with big data and small data and model crafting, we think there's a way to regain authorship and authenticity in the creative process. Also the phenomenological dimension of the practice. How does it feel to be prompting versus to be training your own model with your own data? We think it makes a real difference there. And of course, small data is also cheaper, not just economically, but as environmental footprint as well. So with that, I want to conclude here that there's always been a co-evolution of humans and their technologies. And I'm still a believer in anthropocentric instrumentalism. And so away from the fears of AI taking over, I believe that this is just a set of tools, and we get to decide and to develop the tools that we see will serve us best. And in our case, it's certainly not about replacing human creativity, but more harnessing the power of machine to expand and support our creativity, be it for professionals and or for learners. So I want to thank my team, my colleagues that contributed to all that research. If you love listening to a French accent, there's 25 hours more of me on Cadence, which is a MOOC I really recommend, focusing on teaching creative skills. And then we can find us and our work online, and join us at the conference we contribute to organize called the AI Music Creativity Conference. It just finished in Brussels this year, and it will be at TU Berlin next year. So you can find that and the rest online. I want to thank the funding bodies that are supporting our work. And thank you all for your attention. Bye now.